Dan, I must say, you look very distinguished today.
Well, funny you say that because I was just going to say the same thing about you. Look at
I
you
think,
over there.
yeah,
Wow.
you are more distinguished. You're distinguished-er than I.
I don't know. You're looking pretty snazzy over there, Joe.
Yeah, well, the reason you look so distinguished, Dan, is that you were a member of the advisory committee that helped create the new log splitter, the TimberOX Summit, brought to you by the LogOx company.
Yes, I was. And you were as well. But you
Oh,
have a fresh looking haircut. So that's why you're looking a
yeah, I
little
do.
more distinguished than me.
Yeah, I got a haircut. No, I got them all cut. So if my hair had gotten any longer, I would have started writing poetry. I'd have started wearing turtleneck sweaters and snapping my
Oh,
fingers.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I got my hair cut and the log ox is on my mind, Dan.
Yeah, I saw you just had a video out. You actually had Austin and Matt visiting your woodyard.
Yeah. Well, it only came a month after yours. And that is the reality of life in Northeast Ohio, where we hadn't had winter for the previous 2 years. But this year, winter returned. We never really got the big snow in my area, but man, it's been cold.
Yep.
And that splitter was delivered to me in a blizzard. And then it was encased in 2 inches of ice.
Ooh.
I couldn't even get the crate disassembled because of the ice had formed around it. And serious, that video was supposed to have been recorded the week before, but someone got sick, and it was also minus 14 degrees and windy that day, so it all worked out.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where we got that video recorded by the owner, the founder and managing director of the LogOx company, Austin Roberts,
Yep.
and the owner of Timberwolf from Marathon, New York, Matt Timmons. It was
Right.
a joint venture between the two companies, which, Dan, I also learned because they took me out to dinner that night after the video. What I had learned, do you remember when I was in Bangor, Maine, 2 springs ago? I was
Yes.
up there for the Northeast
Yes. Yep.
Loggers something something. That was Austin and I were together at the Fox Forestry booth where they were showcasing the Yappas. And Austin had gone for a walk, and that's when he had first ran into and met Matt Timmons of Timberwolf, who was also there. And that was where the idea of a joint venture in this log splitter was hatched.
Wow. Interesting. I did not
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, I didn't either
Wow.
until that day.
Yeah, it's been a long, I guess, process or a long road that this is because we you mentioned that advisory board or committee.
Yes.
We were a part of that. God, I don't even remember how long ago that was when we first were
Yeah.
contacted and we started sitting in on a few calls and going over ideas and yeah, that was a long time ago.
We had multiple Zooms,
Yep.
and there were 4 non-employee people that were part of this committee. It was me, Ohio Woodburner, you, Back 40 Firewood, GP Outdoors, and
Stony Ridge Farmer.
Stony Ridge Farmer. And we had multiple Zooms because we all had different experiences with splitters, and they were asking us for our input. They wanted to know what we like in splitters, what we dislike, if we could invent the perfect splitter, how would it look? That was kind of fun.
Yeah. Yes. Very interesting. It was one of those things where like, starting out it was just gathering ideas and then they kind of went and put together a little prototype, CAD drawings that they'd come back and we'd meet again
Yeah.
and look things over and yeah, it was just a fun process to, give input into and then, finally seeing the finished product. I think it was pretty cool to see it all come together.
Yeah, and it was a it was a involvement where they really did care about what our thoughts were because they were making changes based upon what we were talking about. If you recall, like the way the lever works, where
Yep.
the battery was located, how that sliding hitch and stuff, all of that, and then the revisions, which were a lot.
Yeah.
And that was my big takeaway from this. And I just know the way I am and how I do things. And the Logox, that whole group and Matt, they really impressed me because they did not allow a machine to go out onto the market that they felt wasn't A1.
Right.
Yeah.
They weren't going to put anything out until it was ready,
Yeah.
and everything was. They're still continuing. I mean, you had in your video the very first one, and
Yes.
then you compared that to some of the changes made now on the, I guess, version that is out there for sale and available. A
Yeah.
lot of changes.
There was. And if you recall, they unveiled it to the world at the International Firewood Expo 2024, which was
Yes.
in mid-May of 2024. And the thought was that it would be up for sale come a month or two, right? And that was when they had asked me to do a video, which I did, of that prototype. And everyone thought it was cool, but a lot of people were saying, looks like it's could be a little bit faster. And I think that, the two groups were looking at it and they felt the same. And they went back to the drawing board and it was a major rework because the frames are totally different from the original one, the prototype versus what they have now, because they went with a bigger engine, which required a bigger pump and a bigger tank. And it took a lot of different changes. But man, the
Yep.
final product, that thing, I'm serious. Okay, I'm biased. I understand that because I was part of the process. But I'm here to tell you that splitter is legit.
Oh yes, definitely.
It
And
is.
it has features like no other, you know, splitter out there as far as the big box store comparisons. I mean, all those splitters
Yeah,
with just like the little I beam. And I mean, my favorite feature is that large working surface and the large
yes,
working table. I mean, that to me
totally agree.
is just great.
Yeah. I like how it folds up and almost becomes like a workbench because that is where I think if you look at the reality of a log splitter, especially a log splitter like this. So this is I wouldn't it is not a commercial grade splitter. I mean, it's built, you know, like a tank. I mean, this thing's going to last a super long time. But I wouldn't call it commercial and I wouldn't call it homeowner, like what you get at the big box stores, those I-beam
Yeah,
splitter.
right.
And it is that missing part of the market that I just started calling home production, where it is someone that makes a little bit more wood than the typical homeowner. They might have a side hustle, they might have a roadside stand, they might sell bundles, and you want a faster cycle time because you don't want to spend all day listening to a a gasoline engine screaming, running hydraulics because this thing is fast, man. And to me, that is the home production. It's kind of like in between and it's underserved. There are some splitters out there that I would say that fit that market, but there needs to be more in it. And the,
Right.
the, the summit is certainly there.
Yep. I like that home production. That does kind of encapsulate what this machine is
Yeah.
targeting and geared towards. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the big thing that people are saying now is that it doesn't have a log lift. Okay. Which I agree, but it's not a commercial splitter.
There you go.
And, there's always big rounds that you got to pick up and stuff. But I don't know. It just seems to me that a person with that splitter would probably be able to get by without a log lift.
Yep. And you could always use your log ox, your log hauler to lift it up
Yeah.
there. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I can speak from experience just because I keep making more and more wood, but I also keep getting older and older. Because I made my hay with a super splitter, which, the TimberOX Summit kind of has some super splitter ish elements about it,
Yep. Oh
the
yeah.
production table, the cycle time, the height, and all. But that was the one thing that became old after a while. Was, at least for me, the logs that I had to split were the ones that were too big to fit through the machine, which meant that I needed to pick them up myself. So that's just because I'm a commercial operation. I would think, someone that's in home production probably doesn't get the bigger rounds like that. Maybe, maybe not, but everything has a cost too.
Right. Or they have another way of overcoming that obstacle. They might have a tractor, they use the bucket to lift the rounds up to then slide onto the table or slide onto the log splitter. I mean, there's always a way to overcome certain obstacles that you face. So it's not like not having a log lift is totally rules out ever purchasing that machine.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that also, when you think of a home production model, it's not commercial. It means it's going to sit. And honestly, a log splitter spends more time not splitting wood than splitting wood. I mean, there's some out there that's the opposite's true, but what's nice about this is that this machine, it can be folded up and tucked away in your corner, and it doesn't have an awkward footprint like a lot of the big box store splitters do.
And you can
They're kind of
utilize it.
low to the
Yeah.
ground. Yeah, yeah, you can
Yep.
use it as a workbench, a storage. Yeah. Versus like those I-beam splitters, they're low to the ground. They got that big toe plate that sticks out, and then the
Yeah.
the, the ram is clear on the, yeah. So I like it.
Yeah. I could see though in a production environment that TimberOX Summit being used for a resplitting machine, and that's what I've been mostly using it for because it just gives you like I will take seasoned wood that's maybe a little too big, resplit it, and then it allows me to almost like have all those pieces laid out that I can then just bundle right off of that large working area. So
Uh-huh.
that's for me it's been used mostly as a resplitting machine
Yeah.
to make bundles, and it works great.
Yeah. I think though, now when they reworked it and they put the 14 horse on it and the bigger tank and the more oil capacity, it is kind of heavy. And it's nothing you shouldn't and you can't pick it up by the end of the production table and move it around like you could an ultra or a super splitter. So you'd want to leave the hitch in it.
Yes. Yep.
But then I've already tripped over it one time. So you gotta pay attention to when the hitch is in there. But it is a little bit on the heavy side, but it is a stout little machine. It is powerful, and man, is it fast. That
Yep.
speed is for real. And this is how fast that speed is, Dan. If you recall, the prototype had a stroke limiter on it, to help the cycle time out. So if you were working with shorter wood, it wouldn't have to
That's right. Yeah,
cycle
yeah,
all
yeah,
the way
yeah.
back.
Yep.
This new one, they took the stroke limiter off because it is not needed.
Yeah. I that's one thing that when they were mentioning that on one of those calls, I was like, yeah, I don't think that's a problem at all because with the speed of that cycle time, there's no need, you don't need to worry about limiting the stroke. It's back,
No.
it's out and back before you know it, and your next piece is right there.
Yeah, it's almost like my Easton made Axis. I have the Axis GT, and man, is it fast. And it has a stroke limiter on it too, but I don't use it. I leave it all the way out because I just am more comfortable
Yeah.
running it like that because it is fast, man. And I think that's the same way with the TimberOX.
Yep.
It is very fast. When you're running that thing, it is not fooling around, man.
No.
Mm-mm.
The one thing that I really found interesting and I enjoyed being part of the whole process was just seeing all of the attention to detail and the reworking and the changing this, changing that, because I kind of like sometimes I always feel like as a hobbyist that I'm just like going through things. I'll change something here and then I change it again, but that is a process that I think probably many companies use. The proof of concept, the
Yeah.
prototype, the second prototype, the third prototype. It was just fun to be a part of that and see that all come together.
Yeah. So last summer, my family, we were touring colleges out that way for my daughter for grad school. And Timberwolf is just down the road from one of the colleges. So I just worked it out with Matt that I was going to pay a visit. He's going to give me a tour. We'd do a video. And he walked me into this one room, and there was a pile of frames, and they were the TimberOX Summit frames. There were 15 of them, and they were
Ooh.
the frames that they had made for the original prototype, which they were going forward with. But it wasn't, when they decided they needed to make some changes with it. That
Oh,
is
yep.
that is how serious they were. They had
Yeah.
15 frames, so that was all welded because these got humans that do the welding, and they scrapped them. But that's just what they were doing because they wanted it to be good. They wanted it to be right.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Just,
Yeah.
being,
Uh,
like I said, being there on the first one, some of the first calls, seeing the design, and not really knowing how it would end up. You see something on paper, you see a CAD drawing, it's one thing. You get it
yeah.
delivered into your yard, you start using it, and then it just kind of all comes full circle. It was very grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah. I think though the one intangible thing about that splitter that you don't really see much on the videos is how quiet it is, even with the 14 horse, because that engine's tucked up underneath the table.
Yeah.
It is quiet. It doesn't, I think that noise wears you out. If you're around like loud machinery or, a loud chainsaw all day long, I think it just wears you out physically. And that thing is very quiet. It is noticeably more quiet than any other splitter I've run. And I'm just sure it's because of, the way the exhaust is pointing and the way that engine's up under the table like
Or you are just losing your hearing.
that.
Which you did mention earlier, you're getting old. That's a
Yeah, I
possibility.
am.
I'm just saying, but no, it is quiet, and it's that is, I think, like you said, kind of part of the design, just how it's up
Yeah.
underneath. It's not pointing right at you. It's very well thought out. There's a few other things, like that the folding table on the front. I know
Uh-huh.
that went through a couple changes. So everything has just progressed along to, and I think the other big thing is, I think they had one of the versions at Paul Bunyan, but I think more people just need to get out and like see it, like coming up in May at the International Firewood Expo. They need to
Yes.
get it, see it, get their hands on it, and see it in action in person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for real. Um, they also, if you look in the background of my videos, you'll see I have a number of them in my yard. The one, and this is how precise they are with this. The one that got sent to me, after it got sent, they kind of changed their mind on the decals, and they changed some of the decal around, and that's why that extra one's sitting on the yard. Where they just made some subtle changes like that. That's how
Yep.
serious they are about this. Um, and I think, the commitment to being made in the United States. And I am associated with a lot of different companies from outside of the States. But, there is that pride, and you see it with Austin. You see it with the Log Ox team, with John and Lynn, how important it is to have products that are sourced and assembled in the United States. Like the hat we were wearing, it took him a long time to get the hat because he was trying to find the correct vendor, that where these were made in the States.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been, I think, part of the Logox brand from day one. Everything is
Yeah. Oh
made
yeah.
in the USA. Yep.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yep.
But we had talked because we're going to get Austin Roberts. Now he's been a guest on the Woodhounds podcast before. In fact, I
Yeah.
think he was our very first interview on the podcast. So we're looking at getting him and Matt Timmons from the the Timberwolf Corporation to sit down with us and to discuss, a little bit more on the technical side. Because like Matt was explaining to me that regen valve and stuff, and I was standing there, nodding my head with a serious look on my face. I didn't have a
Yep.
clue what the
Yep.
heck he's
Oh
talking
yeah.
about.
Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Oh, regen
Yeah.
that fluid back through there. Yep. Yep.
Uh-huh. Yeah. If you could read my thoughts, I was like, candlesticks make a nice
Yeah.
present.
But no, there is a lot of, like insight like that. Just, the pump size, the hose size, how many gallons
Yeah.
per minute flow, this and that. Yeah, a lot of interesting things. That'll be good. I'm looking forward to when we can get those guys back on here.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. But
Yes.
they had a big to do that weekend too. What they came out to visit me. at Hartville Hardware, which is the nation's largest hardware store. It's about an hour from my place in Hartville, Ohio. It's near Kent State and Akron. It's out that way. And they have a beautiful log ox and timber ox display in their store now with the timber ox on display. And you can buy it there
Nice.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yep. Well, and like I mentioned earlier, I mean, we're not, it seems like a ways away, but the International Firewood Expo, man, that's going to be coming here before we know it. So, all you
yeah,
woodhounds out there listening, make sure you
it
got your
is
calendars marked.
it is getting close. So we just have our very first full page ad in Lumberman's online in
Ooh.
their paper digest and online too. He's a major sponsor of the expo. That's Noah from the Lumberman's online. And Dan, I would say people ask, well, Joe, who's coming? We are now at the point where it's easier for me to say who's not coming. I'm serious. Let's just leave it at that. When I'm saying that this is an international firewood expo, it is. And I mean,
Ooh.
darn near every company you can think of is coming.
So, you are not going to want to miss it. If you are listening right now, mark it down. Be
Yeah.
there.
I say this a lot as a joke, but right now I'm totally meaning it when I say this, Dan. Be there or be square.
There you go. Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. If you're not coming, why not?
Yeah.
Nah, I don't want to
What?
say that because there's a lot, I
Well,
know that.
yeah.
And that's what I'm very grateful for all of these manufacturers and vendors and exhibitors coming because it's a lot, for them to like pack up and trailer stuff across the United States. I totally agree. And you got graduations and weddings and stuff that just interfere. But, I'm just excited for this. I'm excited for the industry and I'm excited that we can be a part of it, Dan.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, if you can't make it, you can't make it. We totally understand. But if you are unable to attend, make sure you tell at least 10 other people so that they attend. Because
Yeah.
we want to get a buzz going about this. We want this to be like, we want to get the attention of the Paul Bunyan show and say, hey, there's another show in Ohio you got to watch out for. It's the International Firewood Expo.
Yeah. What I like about it though, it's in the spring.
And
Yeah.
it's
And
firewood only.
you get some fickle weather, but we're on pavement. If
Oh,
the
yeah.
weather's dry, we can still use the grass. Parking will be on pavement. And it's space is not an issue. I keep getting vendors. I think they've been conditioned over the years, to be sensitive to the booth size, because they want to know which tent to bring.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
just tell them, I said, number one, rule number one is there are no rules. So you put your stuff where you want and take as much space as you need.
Yes.
And yeah, and then we'll all have a fun time.
And if need be, we can move. I mean, not the show and the equipment, but like people can get undercover if we need to
Yeah.
step out of the
We have
rain.
they have this real big commercial building. It's the biggest pole barn I've seen in a long time. Beautiful. It's brand new, nice floor. It's insulated, well lit. That's, it has the flush toilets. So we'll have Command Central in there with the raffle. And we have a number of nonprofits coming, that will be having informational booths. So we'll put them in there too. So the wind's not blowing their
Yep.
pamphlets around and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's going to be something having that flush toilet to go in. Whew. I remember last year, man.
You
Uh,
have made the first ceremonial visit both years when I've rented a porta john.
oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah, that's your job title. You're the director of porta john inspection.
I give it the test. I test it out to make sure it passes inspection.
Yeah.
It's ready for
That's
use.
all, I'm laughing too because the expense, I can't get over how expensive these stupid porta johns were.
Oh,
And
I
that's
know.
where I was thinking, when I looked at what I can rent the fairgrounds for, I was like, well, what the heck?
Yeah.
Just a couple more bucks and we got this whole stinking fairgrounds versus a stupid porta potty. Gee whiz.
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, we went into the wrong line of business. We should have YouTube channels for porta-johns.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I just talk a lot of crap. I don't want to actually collect it.
Yeah. And it would be my number 2 business, not my number 1 business.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
with that, we better
Yeah.
call for the band.
Yeah, we're starting to draw flies here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to strike it up.
Okay, Dan,
Yes.
strike up the band.
All right. There we go. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Woodhounds podcast, the #1 firewood podcast in the world.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the log splitter, the TimberOX Summit, brought to you by the LogOx Corporation, check it out. It is for real. It is exciting to see new and innovative machines out there. This is not a copy of someone else's design, with fresh paint. This is real, and this is an exciting time. And that's what I'm saying about the golden age of the firewood industry. This is what I'm thinking of, Dan.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So, Dan, let's tell everyone out there to check out
the TimberOX Summit.
And man, is it really
a sweet machine.
I thought you were going to say fast.
And fast.
Yeah. And fast. Yeah. And stay
safe.
And have
a great day.